Hello and welcome to IdeaGen Accelerate 2030 Summit. First, I want to thank George, Christian, and the entire IdeaGen team for having us here today. Really excited. I'm Chaitra Vedullapalli. I'm the co-founder and president of Women in Cloud, and we are on a bold mission to create $1 billion in economic access for female tech founders in partnership with Fortune brands, public sector, as well as communities. And today I'm joining in from Seattle. And we are so honored to be part of this summit and host this thought leadership conversation on doubling supplier diversity in the Fortune 1000 networks. Data suggests that Fortune 1000 companies make over $14.2 trillion in revenue, making up 2/3 of the US economy. Digital transformation powered by cloud computing is estimated to be around $700 billion, and 80% of the business-to-business transaction between the suppliers and buyers will occur in digital channels by 2025. The unfortunate situation is women tech founders are only getting access to 2% of this economic opportunities. Now imagine the collective impact of Fortune 1000 companies can create if they consciously invest in doubling the supplier diversity for digital innovation. So for today's panel, we will highlight the systematic hurdles discouraging companies to engage with diverse suppliers and how Fortune brands can become influential in setting a new course for making our economy inclusive. So today we are joined by distinguished panel speakers from IBM, New York City Comptroller's Office, and Accenture. I have Wendy Garcia, Chief Diversity Officer of New York Comptroller's Office, and also Board of Advisor for Women in Cloud. Tameka Little from IBM, who is in charge of supplier diversity for Americas for making their supplier diversity, equity, and inclusion a corporate norm. Nedra Dickson, from Managing Director of Accenture, leading the Accenture's global supplier diversity and sustainability programs across 20 countries. Welcome, ladies. I am so excited to host you to lead this vibrant and rich conversation. So let's get started. I would love you to introduce yourself and share what advancing economic access mean to you. So Wendy, I would love to start with you today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Wendy Garcia. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer for New York City in the Comptroller's Office, and I do everything from contracts to investments. My job is to make sure that women and people of color not only have a seat at the table, but that the regulations that reflect New York City and the supply that reflects New York City make sure that they have a space for women and people of color. So I'm excited to be here because it definitely means a lot, making sure that if we know that 80% of New Yorkers are women and people of color, we know that we're going to have a bolstering economy.
Thank you, Wendy. You have been a fantastic contributor to the Women in Cloud ecosystem, and the proclamation still sits in my house, and I really cherish that. So thank you for making that happen. Tameka Little, I would love you to introduce yourself.
Hello. My name is Tameka Little. I am the Supplier Diversity Program Manager for the Americas at IBM. I have been with IBM for 26 years, and 22 of those years in a supply chain. I graduated from North Carolina Central University and HBCU. I live in Durham, North Carolina. I'm the mother of the amazing young adults. In my job, I support all stakeholders, external and internal, in implementing the supply diversity initiatives within IBM.
Thanks, Tameka. Nedra, how about you? Introduce yourself and also share what advancing economic access means to you.
Thank you very much for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Nedra Dickson. I'm coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. I've been with Accenture now for 20 years, where I'm a managing director and I wear two hats. I lead our global supplier inclusion and sustainability program in 20 countries, and I'm also our Europe procurement lead in 30 countries. I believe this is such the right time to talk about advancing women-owned businesses, not only in every area around products and marketing, but especially in the tech field, that now we have a seat at the table, as was mentioned earlier. So it is my responsibility at Accenture that I can make sure that we find and vet those amazing businesses that are owned by women, diverse other firms, to see how we can integrate them successfully into our supply chain on a global basis. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Nedra. Thank you. Our listeners always want to know more about you. So we want to know, what do you believe in despite not having a proof? So let's start with you, Tameka.
This one was a tough one for me because I didn't want to get too crazy on you guys. So I asked my kids, because they're constantly saying, "Mom, you always do this," or "Mom, you believe this." So, you know, um, I'm going to say my son told me to say that Tupac is still alive. So, I do have a lot of superstitions that I brought back from I brought into my life from parents. So I have a lot of superstitions that may not necessarily be true, but I do follow them. Listening to my mother.
Thank you. Thank you. What about you, Nedra?
I have to say the same with Tameka. I believe many of the things that my parents taught me growing up in Arkansas. And I really believed that if I went outside when it was thundering and lightning, that I was going to, every time I did, my mother says, if you go outside and it's lightning, you're going to be struck by lightning. So I always find myself right now to never go outside when it's when it's lightning.
I have some of those superstitions too, and I try to avoid it because it's a bias seated in your mind. What about you, Wendy?
I have a very Dominican family that believes you're not supposed to go outside with your hair wet. I don't know. And so that superstition, I guess, I fight it all the time, but I tend not to go outside with my hair wet because apparently you get sick.
So Wendy, thank you for sharing all your stories. This is a story because all of you are so passionate about economic access. Tell us a story about why are you so passionate about gender parity and creating access for female tech founders? And what would the world look like when the female tech founders win these opportunities?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that female founders face, and I think this is an open secret, is that it's capital, capital, capital. Making sure that not only do you have the capital, but you have the networks to complement that capital and navigating through those resources. I want to see a tech industry that focuses on creating a pipeline for women, that makes sure that in that pipeline we're addressing funding women, but that also that there's an innovative space for them, because the other part of running a business is that you have someone who's the tech expert, but then you also have someone who needs to make sure they're running the operations of the business, and that's going to be critical moving forward. So we want to see tech businesses have support, specifically around capital and funding, and we want to make sure that we see federal government, state governments, and city governments opening up those doors, so that when there's a new federal project, a new state project coming through, that there are set-asides for female funders.
Totally agree. Capital is the key. What about Nedra? What do you think? Why are you passionate, and what would the world look like?
Well, I always say women get things done in situations when people don't think they're done. So if you think about those that do have funding, Just imagine the innovation that we have now. So I would like to add on to what Wendy said and say, make sure they have the support. So if they get the funding and have the creative space to be innovative, then make sure that they have the right support system around them to be able to, thrive in this space, because we are seeing where now corporations and venture capitals are trying to provide that funding in this space. But let's make sure that they have the same support structure as our male counterparts would have in this, because I think we've seen in the last years that over women-owned businesses have doubled, even I think to triple in some places. So we see women have the ability to not only lead corporations, but begin to own a lot of these businesses. So having that right structure around you is just endless opportunities that I will think we'll see. And one of the other things I've been so interested in seeing when women-owned businesses are there, we see the economic impact that is put back into our communities.
So true, so true. And, with Women in Cloud, we do believe in having the strongest support system. And by doing that, what we've seen is anywhere from 25% to 500% growth during the COVID times. So Tameka, what do you think the business impact would look like if we accomplish these goals in our world?
Like Nedra said, there's so many things we can do. Can you imagine if we didn't have to claw our way in and claw our way up that corporate ladder, what we can do with the resources and the corporations behind us, supporting women who have innovative ways of thinking and new ways of thinking. We do so much, outside of corporate America, inside of corporate America, we juggle and wear so many hats. If we had the resources behind us, it's endless.
I completely agree with you. There is a representation challenge and also access to the resources, whether it's capital or advisors or even technology for them to develop solution. So we see a lot of systematic barriers for women in the supplier networks, whether it's a Fortune brand or a mid-sized company. So Tameka, I'll start with you. What do you see as the primary blockers? And can you share some thoughts on what is needed to reduce such blockers so we can open doors for women in the supplier networks?
Yeah. So, I see it every day. I see the passion from the small businesses, the diverse suppliers that just want an opportunity to get a foot in the door. But it's competitive. Large corporations, they support large companies that put extensive requirements on them. And some of these barriers, these small suppliers just can't keep up with. And, with a large corporation having to meet the needs of the customers, they can't bend all the time. Corporations have to meet and exceed, the customer requirements. And so sometimes large corporations also have core and prime suppliers that will undercut and underbid these smaller companies. At IBM, we understand those obstacles. And like, for example, in our tech services commodity, we do have prime, non-diverse and diverse suppliers. IBM makes a requirement on our core suppliers that they do have diverse programs themselves. So with that said, we can have second tier opportunities for some of these smaller companies and diverse companies.
Thanks, Nedra. What about Tameka? What are you seeing from the Accenture point of view?
And I think Tameka made some good points. What I think is really needed is we share those success stories of the amazing women-owned businesses, because I think a lot of people, a lot of corporations think the businesses are too small or too risky. But when you actually give one of these businesses an opportunity in their wheelhouse of what they're able to do, share that success story and share that with not only those internal internal, but share external. What I love about the supplier diversity world is that you can share best practices across competitors as an IBM, across clients. So I think it's one of those spaces when you do find that particular small business, share them. And what we've done at Accenture is that we have a woman-owned business that really developed some amazing augmented reality, virtual reality. Her company's AP42 and actually in San Francisco. And what we were able to do was showcase her work with a lot of our other corporate partners. And so once they were able to see what this woman business was able to do and how such a large corporation like Accenture was able to collaborate, it now presented ideas for them on how to incorporate her in their business. So I think it is so important that we, show that, yes, while they are small, but there still is ways and very innovative ways in which we can create those opportunities to collaborate or even co-innovate with some of those businesses. And that's what we've been able to do at Accenture.
I love the co-innovation concept because I think the world is trending in that direction, Nedra, and more co-selling, co-building, and co-innovating models are coming into the market. And Wendy, you have done a substantial work in this space in the public sector. Can you share what were the primary blockers or systematic blockers that you are seeing, and how are you, removing it?
Yeah. So New York is an interesting place because I think people have a sense that because New York City is so diverse that all our regulations reflect that. And in the last 8 years, we've been able to take a look at what the city spends, how much they spend, who they're spending it with, and asking those really critical questions. And what we found is that out of the city's $20 billion budget, only 5% was going to women and minority-owned businesses. Of that, less than 1% and 2% were going to Black and Latino businesses. So we knew that there's a gap that we needed to solve for both outside at city agencies and inside the Comptroller's office. So when in the last, we've been able to go from $1 million within the Comptroller's office, and now we're spending up to $8.5 million. So we've really doubled and tripled every year by $1 million to impact those vendors. We've been able to create regulation to have chief diversity officers in every single agency. The city didn't have that before. The city also didn't have a program that was codified in the Constitution that was just for women and people of color. And we were able to make history and do that and have the voters bring that in just last year. And really what it is taking a look at how systemic racism has impacted government and undoing those barriers. I would love to see, and we're seeing this now with the Biden administration a bit more, where they are also hiring chief diversity officers at the federal level. And they have an appointment by Susan Rice, who is also looking at that through the lens of finance, which is exciting. I want to see a government that at the federal, state, and city level has very specific supplier diversity targets. I think that is critically important. It is specifically important to do that by ethnicity and by communities and understand those differential gaps. And I think it's important that government hold the private sector accountable and that consumers hold the private sector accountable. When we looked at how many companies were actually doing business with women and people of color, we got great numbers like, we spent $1 billion. But what is $1 billion out of a $300 billion budget, right? So what we want to see is proportional access for women and people of color, both in the private and public sector.
Sure. Wendy, one is, the codifying in the Constitution is the key. I am really going to ask the universe that you become the CDO for America and change and codify all these institutional policies and also make, proportional access for all of us. So we'll all, whenever you're deciding to go for that role, please let us know. we are here for you. So as we talked about, like, it's a $700 billion in opportunity in the Fortune 100 ecosystem. Nedra, I want to talk about, because Accenture works in that space very deeply. What is stopping these Fortune brands to really engage the suppliers to support the digital transformation initiative? Is it the pipeline issue? What is stopping them?
I still think that it's the awareness. So we're now, if you think about right now with this push, here's another push. But a lot of these businesses have been around for years. So it's a matter of making sure that they now have a stage. We're talking about this. So let's not just talk about it and put that action behind us, what Wendy was talking about. But I think with some of the corporations, and you look at Accenture, we're 540,000 employees globally now, trying to make sure that everyone understands that we have the capability within the firm of leveraging these diverse and small owned businesses is one of my goals every year. So we're continuing to make sure that we create that awareness internally and externally. So I think that is 1.2. And as I said, the other point as well is making sure that we are setting them up for success, because we want to make sure those barriers of everyone thinking that a diverse supplier or a small business is too small or too risky. Many of these businesses do have corporate background experience. So they are fully aware of the workings of how large corporations work, some of the nuances and some of the bureaucracy that's there. So we just need to really find out, how do we have that right conversation, find out where that success can be, create that awareness, and then that opportunity is right there. And when that opportunity is there, let's leverage it. Let's make sure that we are partnering the women-owned businesses or any small diverse-owned businesses in their wheelhouse. Because again, we're not saying a diverse business is going to be given work. They still have to win that work. They still have to compete on that work. It's about giving them that opportunity to be able to bid on that RFP, bid on that tender that's coming out. And when you give them that opportunity, I think more people will be amazed at not only will these businesses win that work, but they will exceed that work. And then you will continue to have that opportunity to grow and scale that business. So I think it is, I guess it's very imperative now for large corporations to really find those successful ways to integrate those suppliers into our supply chain. So I think to answer your question, yes, it's to create that awareness of the pipeline, make sure we share those success stories, and allow them to be able to bid on those RFPs and tenders when they are available.
And Anita, that's so well said. And I think this was a consistent feedback from all the Fortune brands that we've been talking to. And awareness has been, and now that we have Accenture being one of our strategic partner, I'm really looking forward to making all our entrepreneurs accessible to you. Let's get that one right. And then we can always look into creating the, giving them access to apply for the RFP. The thing that we also saw was one of the brands, Stylized, they were working in Neiman Marcus ecosystem, and they were acquired last week. And they went through the accelerator, they were ready, and women had worked in enterprise. They knew how to navigate the entire transformation as well as the acquisition of the solution. So we are seeing some really great results. So Nedra, what would you like to share in this one from the IBM perspective? Because you're making the supplier channel very inclusive, and what is stopping IBM or other brands as you're engaging?
It's Tameka from IBM.
Oh, sorry, Tameka.
It's okay. I agree with what Nedra was saying, and I also think it needs to start from the top. At IBM, we have, our top executives, our CEOs really support supports our supplier diversity program, where we have, a corporate policy 137 that we provide diverse businesses with the opportunity to support, to participate in all areas of IBM's marketing, procurement, and contracting activities. Simply put, we make sure that every global RFI contains at least one diverse supplier. So starting from the top, having, business initiatives, we every year, supplier diversity measurement goals and targets are defined, reviewed by our senior procurement executives. These goals are defined on a category level and consolidated for the global procurement organization. Results monthly by the Supplier Diversity Program, our program director, Michael Robinson, and our Chief Procurement Officer, Bob Murphy. So we hold the commodities and the business units accountable for their commitments on a monthly basis to meet their initiatives for their diverse spend. Like I said, we measure them every year. We have make our core and prime suppliers accountable as well by making them agree to have a diversity program as well.
Thank you, Tameka. I got the name right. So Wendy, I would love to know more from, there are a lot of, you have been able to codify in the institution, right? So Constitution, is there something we can do in the Fortune brands, because it's stopping them to engage with supplier diversity or diverse suppliers? Is there anything we can look at and really help them to really stop the challenges that they have today?
Yes, one of the things that we found was helpful to our office, and what really got us from starting off at $1 million to 8.5 million in 8 years, is that we created what's called a market analysis. And a market analysis for MWBs, which is women and minority-owned businesses, that what it did was it actually worked backwards. We took a look at whether we knew that experience was always a challenge. So I think either Tameka had highlighted this earlier, saying that one of the challenges that we have is that people think we don't have capacity, right? That our communities don't have capacity to do very large work, and they associate being a woman of color or a person of color or a woman with small or not having back office. So what we did is that before we put a scope of work out, we would review who are the suppliers in that particular area. We would look to see what experiences the suppliers who were suppliers of color and women had, and then we would take that aggregate and create a scope of work that they would always have access to. Because what we found is that the biggest challenge that every supplier has is that once we put out those scopes of work, whether you're at AT&T or Accenture or you are at the federal government, state government level, is that the criteria in which the contract language lays out is what actually keeps people out. That's where systemic racism lives. And so we knew we needed to attack that, and we needed to address it head on by making sure that each scope of work is reflective of the market. And that's just good business. It's good operations 101. You should always be looking at what the market looks like. And the truth is that we are the highest growing population. We also own the most businesses. So everyone should be taking a look at what new markets look like so that it can reflect your scopes of work. What we find is that most people's scope of work reflects something from 10 years ago, and all they're doing is repeating it. And that is what is keeping a lot of our vendors out. We have found great success in that, and we really recommend it to everyone.
And that is so true, Wendy, like looking at the scope of work and those agreements that's being moving from years to year. If that is addressed, the criteria are addressed, looking at the market ecosystem, how the innovations are done, I think every company can take participate in transforming to make the economy a little bit more inclusive. We will now get into more what our listeners love to learn is they want to learn about how-tos and best practices so they can take away and take action. Most of them who are listening are entrepreneurs. So as a buyer of tech, are there any criteria that you use to select a vendor? And what are the metrics that you use to measure the performance? And if there are any checklists that you would use for selecting tech solutions and companies when awarding the RFP? So I will start with you, Nedra.
Yes, so there's always lessons learned in this space. One of the things that I would always tell an entrepreneur and trying to work with Accenture is to do your homework. There's so much stuff on the internet and on corporates' websites to where you can actually see some of the work that has already been delivered for some of our clients, or you can see where the investments are going for the future. We're a publicly traded company, just released our earnings statement. So to me, these are great places that I would say for an entrepreneur to start and to do your homework. See if there's anything that this corporation is doing that could really fit in a solution that you have. There's always so many gaps to where I think an entrepreneur can fit in. And do understand that a lot of the supplier diversity professionals are really trying to connect you with the right people. So we have to make sure that we understand what is that solution that you're bringing to the table. So there are a lot of entrepreneurs that will be in the same field. And if it becomes a saturated field, then my lesson learned there is, how do you fill a particular gap that is not done? So I would say do your homework, ensure that you are staying on their radar. And what I call that is persistent patience. So please be persistent with that supplier diversity professional, but also be patient, because you do see a lot of more entrepreneurs than there are supplier diversity professionals. And to make sure that you are ready to go and understand what is expected in that deal. So that means whether you have your certification, if that corporation is requiring you to be certified, some do take self-reported or self-classified businesses, but make sure you understand what is required and help everyone get your message out to make sure they're connecting you to that right opportunity. The other thing I will say is many corporations have mentoring programs, and I know there are a lot, and I know many entrepreneurs might not want to do the mentoring programs, but please understand that is a way to get your foot in the door. Because in our mentoring program at Accenture, our diverse supplier development program, over half of our graduates are working with us and integrated in our supply chain. The other half are working with our clients. So please look at all of those opportunities to be able to work with those corporations, but please be persistent and patient.
So what a wise wisdom. Patience is the key. And I have seen, as I spend a lot of time helping our Accelerator participants, they want to go fast and quick. And I keep saying enterprise is slow, but it's really big. The opportunity is big. So be patient. Wendy, what are you seeing in this space? What is the criteria do you use to select a vendor?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but one of my lessons learned throughout these last 8 years is that we would find that vendors were kept out on years of experience because the scope of work, for example, would say looking for X, Y, and Z with 25 years of vendor experience. So this automatically would keep out anyone who's been in business for 2 years or 3 years, which by default was normally a minority or women-owned business. So what we restructured that to reflect years of experience doing the work, not years of experience open in business, because really you're hiring the human that's doing the job, not the LOC that is, opening up from the day they open to the day they close. We also focused a lot on similar experience. So one of the institutional issues we found is that you would see scopes of work that said you have to have done business with our particular agency or our particular corporation. Hey, if I've done business with you before, I don't have trouble coming back again. And most likely it means I've been doing business with you all the time, which most likely makes me a white male business. We wanted to address that. So we reworded that contract language to say similar experience or similar size or similar scope. While those things may seem small, they really did change access for many of our minority and women vendors. And we saw great results because of it. It was like we opened up these doors that had been closed for such a long time.
Oh, so that was fantastic. So, Tameka, we'll go to the next piece of that is IBM has been doing, millions of dollars of transaction, and what kind of companies stood out and you wanted to do business with them? There must be some best practices you can share with us.
As Wendy and Nedra was saying, patience is the virtue. On a daily basis, I get emails from suppliers that want to, just speak to me, knowing that, I may not be the person who makes a decision to award them access to an RFI. However, patience. Come to the table. If you can come to the table, everybody must know their strengths and weaknesses. If you are owner of a company, speaking and selling yourself may not be your strong suit. So have someone who knows the ins and outs of the business, sell your business, know your revenue, know your top customers, know the business that you're trying to get into, know what the company that you're speaking with, what they do, and how your company can play or make advances or help that company as well. But yeah, patience. Take the advice that's given. As I stated earlier, we have opportunities for second tier that will allow small and diverse businesses just get their foot in the door. It does wonders for someone to come back and say, I've worked with IBM through one of your prime vendors, XYZ. So they understand how IBM works, some of our nuances and so forth. So patience. Stay vigilant, stay on. I get emails. I have a person that emails me once to set up status calls. So stay on it, know your business, and know your role in that business.
So well said. So well said. I think the theme is patience, be persistent, take action. So I want to go to a future state, because at Women in Cloud, we love to take action, actually bold action. So we would love all of you to suggest and recommend what kind of policies we should be looking into. So I'll open it up for all of you. What are the policy areas and things that you are changing in your area to advance the supplier diversity? So I will start with you, Nedra.
Yes, one of the things that we're doing now is, in fact, we just decided on this. I'll be starting a center of excellence where I will not wait for anyone to say, oh, we need a diverse supplier. We're going to bring these diverse solutions to our clients, to anywhere that we can see that, where it's so important to show, as I said earlier, that large corporations can collaborate and co-innovate with diverse-owned businesses. So what we're going to start doing is maybe not the policy route, but we're going to make sure that each one of our deals that we're doing with our clients have a diverse solution, that we can find some way to interact a diverse supplier in where it is a value add component. Because I think what's missing in supplier diversity is that everyone needs to understand that there is value add being brought to these businesses. What Women in Cloud can really bring, the innovation that can touch a global landscape, can just be endless. So we are making sure that where that value add is, we are incorporating a diverse supplier to be along with Accenture to collaborate and co-innovate in every deal we touch.
Thanks, Nedra. We launched the solutions marketplace, built, all the solutions are built by women entrepreneurs. So if you're ever looking for which solution is available in which industry, it's available. And by the end of the year, we'll have some really solid 100 solutions built by women to serve the enterprise market.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So Wendy, what about you? What policy areas are you changing?
Yeah, I think we actually wrote a letter about 2 months ago to the White House asking them to prioritize supplier diversity, and we were happy to see that they announced about 3 weeks ago that they were going to be focused on that. I'm a big proponent of having targets by ethnicity. I think is extremely important. I think when government is putting out these large projects, whether it's like redoing infrastructure or digitizing government, or placing targets in corporate companies who, by the way, get tax incentives for doing business across the nation, they should all be mandated to do business with women and minority-owned businesses, because we all have that responsibility. So we've written a letter to Biden asking for that to be prioritized in this administration, particularly in his first 200 days. We were happy to see that was addressed. On the city side, we will be putting out a report in a few months that we put out annually, giving our recommendations. I think if I had a suggestion for New York City government, is to continue to hold city agencies accountable on how they're doing with women and minority-owned businesses by the dollars spent, to continue granting them access, but more important, to take a deep dive on those regulations that have been barring women and people of color. We have multiple boards that have oversight over the contracting process, and that needs to be addressed in this next upcoming administration.
Thanks, Wendy. As part of the Board of Advisor, collaboration, we actually have rolled out as a corporate pledge for all the enterprise brands to pledge that they are going to make their supplier ecosystem diverse, especially around the digital transformation work. I would love to collaborate with you and see how we make that a mandate, and then also explore what incentives that, enterprise companies can get access to. So Tameka, what about you? What are you changing in your world at IBM?
So as I stated earlier, IBM has a corporate policy where at least one diverse supplier must be in every RFI that goes. So without that, if there's not one that the buyer or the SRM can find, they have to come to the supplier diversity team find diversity that goes out. And also as I stated earlier, the commodities and the categories are held up for the commitments that they make per year, and held accountable for that diverse spend each and every year. So I also take it a step further as where, I catalog suppliers that I speak with, and I am constantly reaching out to the buyers and the SRM to offer new diverse suppliers, for their particular category, to take a look at, to have a conversation with, just to get to know them, and hopefully, if they're not a right fit at that particular point in time, to mentor them into what they need to do to get into that space.
Thank you so much. So we are coming to the end of the panel. What a rich discussion. I learned so much from each one of you. So is there any final words of wisdom and resources that you want to share with the listeners today? Wendy, I'll start with you first.
All right, final words. I would say if you are a vendor and you're listening and you're in the tech field, keep pushing through. I know that we've been talking about so many systemic issues dealing with women and people of color, but that should just be a motivator. I don't think that should be something to stop you. We are in an era where people understand that diversity needs to be taken all the way to the top. So this is our time, and it is our time to participate in this economy. And the truth is that not the United States or New York City, depending on where you are, it is not going to come back unless women bring it back. So that would be my.
Thank you. Tameka.
I would say, as we all take our own careers in our hands, these corporations or these small companies need to do the same. Look for resources and networks to join. In my personal or my workplace, I am part of the business resource group for women. I'm a part of the business resource group for African Americans. I'm a part of Women in Procurement. These small companies need to find their networking groups. And also find mentors and sponsors to help them out, train, help them need to know what they need to help them find what they need to know to approach these companies.
And Nedra.
Yes, I think we have the stage right now. So let everyone know we belong on the stage. Let them know we are innovative. We are smart. We are partners. We want to be here. We're here. So let's show them why we're here. And I think entrepreneurs is what's needed in this world. That's what makes the world go around, not just in one place. Let's leverage it. Let's partner. Let's show everyone how great we can be together. Be patient, but be bold, and be persistent, because we belong here and the stage is now, and let's just show them why.
And thank you, ladies. What a fantastic panel. I learned a few things is we can change at a policy level. The time is right. And Wendy, we are voting for you to be the CDO for America. So that is committed. And Nedra and Tameka, really, we have the entrepreneurs truly ready for serving the enterprise ecosystem. So as we work together, we can definitely create the awareness and also give a seat at the table to really do the transformation. And from the Women in Cloud perspective, you have access to the support system to ensure that you are not left behind. You don't have to do it all alone. You have mentors, you have corporations, as well as the policymakers to help you. So here are a few things for you to take away. There are 3 things for you to get engaged with us. So first, because there's a lot of job displacement that's happening, and if you're looking for a job and to transition into the cloud tech industry, please come to our ecosystem and put your profile in, and we will get you connected to the hiring companies as well as the recruiters. So that's very important. If you're an entrepreneur and you really want to co-innovate, co-sell, co-market with companies like Accenture and Microsoft all the world, join the Cloud Accelerator, because it's a 6-month immersive program, helps you develop an enterprise-ready solution so that when you are in conversation with them, you have gone through the entire checklist of what Nedra, Tameka, and Wendy said. All those checklists is really turns into green so that you are very, very ready. And then if you're really looking for connecting with the network of people who are driving access for you, please join our signature events. The upcoming event that is happening is the Week at Inspire, which is in tandem with Microsoft Inspire. So we're looking around 500 to 700 women and men coming here to unlock economic access for you and create opportunities. So I hope all of you can join us. This one was a fabulous panel. Please join our digital network and please get connected with us, with Wendy, with Tameka and Nedra, and really start the journey with them. Again, thank you for being with us today.